I know you took it, didn't you? How could you do this to us? Look at me when I'm talking to you.
I knew something was wrong the moment I opened my jewelry box. The velvet slot where my wedding ring had rested for over 40 years was empty. Just a faint indentation left behind, like a ghost of everything I had lost. My hands started to shake before my mind could catch up. "Ethan?" I called out, my voice thinner than I intended. He appeared in the doorway, avoiding my eyes. That was when I knew. My own son hadn't just taken a ring, he had taken the last piece of his father I still held on to. And I had no idea why. If this story touches something in you, please like and subscribe. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been hurt by someone you trusted the most? Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Maybe we're not as alone as we think. The first time Robert slipped that ring onto my finger, his hands were trembling. I still remember how warm his skin felt against mine, how the sunlight poured through the tall windows of that small church in Cedar Grove, Illinois. It wasn't a grand wedding. There were no expensive decorations, no orchestra, no designer dress. Just a handful of family, a borrowed veil, and a man who looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. "I wish I could give you something better," Robert had whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I laughed back then. I actually laughed. "This is more than enough," I told him. And I meant it, because it wasn't the ring itself. It was what it represented. Promise. Commitment. A life we were building from nothing. That ring had never been worth much, at least not in dollars. A simple gold band, slightly thicker than most, with a modest diamond set just high enough to catch the light. But to me, it held 42 years of marriage. It held every argument we survived, every late-night talk, every bill we somehow managed to pay, every silent prayer whispered when things felt impossible. And now, it was gone. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty space on my finger, rubbing the faint indentation that had formed over decades. It felt wrong, like a part of me had been erased. Ethan moved around the house upstairs, his footsteps heavy, uneven. He thought I didn't notice the way he avoided the kitchen, the way he kept his door half closed, the way silence followed him like a shadow. But I noticed everything. When you've spent a lifetime reading people, your husband, your child, you don't just forget how. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair, letting the memories come whether I wanted them to or not. Robert had always been a quiet man, not distant, just contained. He carried things inside himself in a way that both comforted and frustrated me. When life got hard, and it often did, he would smile, kiss my forehead, and say, "Don't worry, Di. I've got it." And somehow, he always did. There were years when money was so tight, I reused tea bags twice. Years when Ethan needed new shoes and I pretended mine were still fine. Years when the mortgage notice sat on the counter longer than I liked to admit. But Robert never let us fall. Not completely. Looking back now, I realize how many things I didn't question. Like the times he came home late, smelling faintly of metal and oil, saying he had taken an extra shift. Or the afternoons when he disappeared without explanation, only to return quieter than usual, his eyes distant. And then there were the moments with the ring. I frowned, remembering. "Hey," I had asked once, catching him gently sliding the ring off my finger while I was washing dishes. "What are you doing?" He smiled, that easy, reassuring smile. "Just needs a quick cleaning. You deserve to see it shine." I didn't argue. Why would I? A few days later, he returned it to me, polished and gleaming brighter than before. That wasn't the only time. There were at least 4, maybe 5 times over the years when he took the ring like that. always with a simple explanation, always returning it. I never thought much of it until now. A chill crept up my spine as I sat there staring at nothing. Why would he take it so often? Why did it suddenly feel like those small, forgettable moments were trying to tell me something I had ignored for decades? Upstairs, a door creaked. Ethan. I heard him pause, as if deciding whether to come down or retreat. For a brief second, I thought he might walk into the kitchen and finally say anything. Instead, his footsteps turned away. My chest tightened. This wasn't just about a ring anymore. It was about the growing distance between us, about the way my son had become a stranger in his own home, about the quiet resentment I could feel radiating from him even when he said nothing at all. When had that happened? I pushed myself up from the chair and walked slowly toward the sink. The afternoon light cast long shadows across the counter, highlighting the small details of a life that had once felt full-framed photos, a chipped ceramic mug, the old clock Robert insisted on keeping even after it started ticking too loudly. Everything was still here. Everything except him. And now, the last thing he had ever given me. My fingers curled into the edge of the counter. If Ethan had taken the ring, and I was almost certain he had, then there had to be a reason. People didn't just sell something like that without desperation. At least, I hoped they didn't. I thought about confronting him again, forcing the truth out of him, but something held me back. Maybe it was the look in his eyes earlier, defensive, guarded, almost ashamed. Or maybe it was the voice in the back of my mind telling me that I wasn't ready for whatever the truth might be. Instead, I turned and walked down the hallway toward the coat rack. Ethan's jacket hung there just as he had left it. For a long moment, I hesitated. I had never been the kind of mother to invade my son's privacy. Even when he was a teenager, I trusted him to make his own choices, his own mistakes. Robert and I had agreed on that. Trust was something you gave freely, or not at all. But this felt different. This felt like something had already been broken. "I'm sorry," I whispered under my breath, though I wasn't sure if I was apologizing to Ethan or to Robert. Slowly, I reached into the pocket. My fingers brushed against something thin and stiff. Paper. My heart began to pound as I pulled it out, unfolding it with trembling hands. At first, the words didn't make sense. They blurred together as my eyes struggled to focus. Then I saw it. Hayes Jewelry and Restoration. A receipt. Date just 2 days ago. Item 1, gold wedding band with diamond setting. Amount paid $320. I sucked in a sharp breath. $320. That was all my marriage had been reduced to 42 years. Countless sacrifices, a lifetime of love, $320. My knees felt weak, and I had to steady myself against the wall. But it wasn't just the amount that made my stomach twist. It was the realization that Ethan hadn't just taken the ring. He had lied. He had looked me in the eye and pretended he knew nothing about it. And suddenly, a new question began to form, one far more frightening than the first. What kind of trouble was he in that he would do something like this? I folded the receipt slowly, my mind racing. Hayes Jewelry. I had never heard of it before. But I was going to find it. Because whatever was happening to my son, whatever had driven him to this point, I needed to know. Even if the truth shattered everything I thought I understood about my life and the man I had loved. I didn't confront Ethan right away. I wish I could say it was because I was calm, because I wanted to think things through like a rational person. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what he would say. Afraid of what I might hear in his voice, the indifference, the irritation, or worse, the complete absence of remorse. Instead, I spent the next hour sitting in the living room, the receipt folded tightly in my hand, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Every tick of the clock on the wall sounded louder than usual, like it was counting down to something inevitable. Finally, I heard Ethan come downstairs. His footsteps were hesitant, almost careful, as if he knew he was walking into something he couldn't avoid anymore. "Mom!" he called. I didn't answer right away. I let him see me sitting there, the receipt visible between my fingers. The moment his eyes landed on it, everything changed. There it was, the flicker of recognition, the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened just slightly before he tried to recover. "You went through my stuff?" he asked, his voice sharp. I let out a slow breath. "That's what you're worried about," I said quietly. "Not the fact that you sold your father's wedding ring." He flinched. That was all the confirmation I needed. "I didn't," he started, but the words died in his throat. "Don't I cut him off?" My voice trembling despite my effort to stay steady. "Don't lie to me again, Ethan. Not about this." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing a few steps into the room like a caged animal. "It's not what you think," he muttered. "Then, tell me what it is," I said. Silence stretched between us. I could feel the weight of years pressing down on that moment. Years of trust, of love, of believing that no matter how hard life got, we would always be honest with each other. Ethan stopped pacing and looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since this began. "You wouldn't understand," he said. The words hit harder than I expected. I wouldn't understand. LD always be honest with each other. Ethan stopped pacing and looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since this began. "You wouldn't understand," he said. The words hit harder than I expected. "I wouldn't understand," I repeated softly. "Try me." He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "You're still stuck back there, Mom," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the past. "Everything to you is about Dad, about that ring, about all of it. You don't see what's happening right now." My chest tightened. "And what exactly is happening right now?" I asked. His expression darkened. "Bills?" he snapped. "Debt. Real life. So, you sold the one thing that mattered most to me." My voice cracked despite myself. Without even asking, I needed the money, he shot back, for what I demanded. He hesitated. That hesitation told me more than anything else. "For what, Ethan?" I pressed, my voice rising. He looked away, his shoulders slumping just slightly. "It's complicated," he said. "No," I said firmly, "it's not. You took something that wasn't yours. You lied about it, and now you won't even tell me why." "I said it's complicated," he snapped louder this time. The sudden sharpness in his tone made me flinch. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, more quietly, almost under his breath, he added, "You wouldn't get it anyway." I stared at him, searching his face for the boy I had raised. The one who used to run to me with scraped knees, who used to ask me questions about everything, who used to believe I could fix anything. That boy felt very far away now. "Try me," I repeated softer this time. Ethan sighed heavily, dropping into the armchair across from me. He looked exhausted, not just physically, but something deeper, something worn down. "I'm behind on payments," he admitted finally. "Car rent, some other stuff." "What other stuff?" I asked carefully. He didn't answer right away. His fingers tapped restlessly against his knee, a nervous habit he had carried since childhood. "It just got out of control," he muttered. One thing led to another. A cold knot formed in my stomach. "Ethan," I said slowly, "what aren't you telling me?" He closed his eyes for a second, then looked at me again. "There were bets," he said. The word hung in the air. "Bets," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded once, almost defensively. "Nothing crazy at first," he said quickly. "Just small stuff. It felt like I could catch up, like if I'd just won once or twice." "Oh my God," I breathed.
"I thought I could fix it."
He said, his voice rising with desperation. "I really did. But then it kept getting worse, and I didn't know how to stop." I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. "And you thought selling your father's ring would fix that?" I asked.
"I didn't think you'd even notice,"
he said. The words landed like a slap. For a moment, I couldn't speak. "You didn't think I'd notice?" I repeated slowly. "The one thing I've worn every single day for over 40 years. He winced. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" I demanded. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked down at the floor, his silence louder than anything he could have said. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Do you have any idea what that ring means to me?" I asked. He shook his head faintly. "No," I said. "Of course you don't, because to you, it's just gold. Just something you can trade for a few $100s. "I said I needed it," he insisted, frustration creeping back into his voice. "And I said you should have talked to me," I shot back. We stared at each other, both breathing harder than we should have been. Then something shifted, the anger drained out of Ethan's face, replaced by something else. Shame.
"I didn't want you to know,"
he said quietly. "Why?" I asked. "Because I already felt like a failure," he admitted. The words caught me off guard. "I'm 34, Mom," he continued, his voice low. "I should have my life together by now. I shouldn't be this, I echoed. "A mess," he said bluntly. My heart softened for a brief moment, but the pain was still there, sharp and unrelenting. "So you thought stealing from me was better than asking for help?" I said. He didn't respond, because there was no good answer. I looked down at the receipt in my hand, smoothing out the creases. $320, I said quietly. He swallowed. "That's what you got for it." He nodded once. I let out a hollow laugh. "Do you know how many years of my life that represents?" I asked. "No," he said. 42, I whispered. The room fell silent again. Then slowly I stood up. "I'm going to that store," I said. Ethan's head snapped up. "What?" "Hayes Jewelry," I said, holding up the receipt. "I'm going to see if the ring is still there." "And if it's not?" he asked. I met his gaze. "Then I guess I'll finally understand exactly how much we've lost." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. For the first time, he looked afraid. Not of me, but of what might come next. And deep down, so was I. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that number again. $320 burned into the back of my mind like it meant something more than it should. It wasn't just the amount. It was what it represented. The reduction of something sacred into something transactional. And worse than that, it meant Ethan had walked into a place, handed over something that carried our entire family's history, and accepted a price for it. Without hesitation. Without calling me. Without even thinking twice. At least that's what I kept telling myself. But somewhere deep inside, a quieter voice, kept asking a different question. What if he did hesitate? What if this wasn't as simple as I wanted it to be? The next morning came too quickly. The house felt colder than usual, even though the thermostat hadn't changed. I moved through the kitchen in silence, pouring coffee I barely tasted, watching the sunlight stretch across the floor in long, quiet lines. Ethan didn't come downstairs. I wasn't surprised. Part of me was relieved. I didn't trust myself to speak to him again. Not yet. Not until I had answers. Real answers. I grabbed my coat and purse, folding the receipt carefully and slipping it inside. My hands were steadier now, but the weight in my chest hadn't eased. As I reached the front door, I paused. For just a second, I considered turning back, pretending none of this had happened, letting the ring go, letting the past stay buried where it belonged. But then I looked down at my empty finger, and I knew I couldn't. Not this time. The drive across town felt longer than it should have. Cedar Grove wasn't a big place. I had lived here most of my life, knew every street, every corner store, every shortcut. But somehow, Hayes Jewelry and Restoration felt like it existed in a part of town I had never really seen before. Older, quieter, almost forgotten. The building itself was easy to miss. A narrow storefront tucked between a closed-down bakery and an antique shop, its sign slightly faded but still readable. The windows were lined with displays that looked more like a museum than a retail store. Old watches, vintage brooches, rings that seemed to belong to another era entirely. I sat in the car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. This was it. Whatever I was about to learn, there was no going back after this. I stepped out the cool morning air hitting my face and walked toward the door. A small bell chimed as I pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled faintly of metal and polish clean, but with a depth to it that spoke of years, maybe decades of careful work. The lighting was warm, almost dim, casting soft reflections across glass cases filled with jewelry. It didn't feel like a place where things were sold. It felt like a place where things were kept. "Can I help you?" The voice came from behind the counter. I turned to see an older man, probably in his late 60s, standing there with a polishing cloth in his hands. His hair was silver, neatly combed back, and his eyes were sharp, too sharp for someone his age, like they missed nothing. "Are you Leonard Hayes?" I asked. He studied me for a moment before nodding. "I am," he said. "What can I do for you?" I took a step forward, reaching into my purse. "My son was here," I said, placing the receipt on the counter. 2 days ago?" Leonard glanced down at it, then back up at me. "And what is your son's name?" he asked. "Ethan Fleming." The moment I said it, something changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. A flicker of recognition. Not just of the name, but of something deeper. He looked at me again, longer this time. "Diana Fleming," he said quietly. My breath caught. "Yes," I said slowly. "How do you—" "I was wondering when you might come in," he interrupted gently. A chill ran through me. "You were expecting me?" I asked. "In a manner of speaking," he said. I stared at him, my mind racing. "Then you know why I'm here?" I said. He nodded. "The ring," he said simply. "Yes," I replied, my voice tightening. "My wedding ring." He set the cloth down carefully, as if what we were about to discuss required his full attention. "Your son did bring it in," he said. My heart skipped, and I pressed. "And he sold it," Leonard confirmed. The words still hurt, even though I already knew them. "But you didn't put it out for sale," I said quickly. "It's not in your display." "No," he said. Why not? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked slowly toward a small cabinet behind the counter, unlocked it, and reached inside. My breath caught as he turned back toward me. In his hand was the ring. My ring. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The room, the tension, the questions. All I could see was that small circle of gold resting in his palm, catching the light, just like it always had. I kept it, he said. Why, I asked barely above a whisper. He stepped closer and placed it gently on the counter between us. Because it shouldn't have been sold, he said. I let out a shaky breath, my fingers hovering over it before finally picking it up. The moment it touched my skin, something inside me broke. Or maybe healed. I didn't know. It's mine, I said softly.
Yes, Leonard agreed. It always was.
I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus. Then why didn't you just tell him that? I asked, why take it at all? Leonard's expression shifted slightly, something heavier settling into his eyes. Because he said slowly, this isn't the first time that ring has been in my shop. I froze. What I whispered, he held my gaze.
Your husband, he said. Robert Fleming.
The name hit me like a shockwave. What about him, I asked. Leonard took a breath. He brought that ring here, he said, more than once. My fingers tightened around the gold band. That's not possible, I said instinctively. He would have told me. Leonard didn't argue. He simply looked at me with a quiet kind of certainty that made my stomach twist. I think he said gently, there are some things your husband chose not to tell you. The room suddenly felt smaller. The air heavier. What are you talking about? I demanded. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached back into the cabinet and pulled out a small envelope. Worn, aged, and sealed. He placed it beside the ring. And I think Leonard added his voice, calm but firm. It's time you saw this. I stared at the envelope, my heart pounding. Something inside me knew. Whatever was in that envelope was going to change everything. I didn't touch the envelope right away. My fingers hovered over it, trembling slightly, as if even brushing against the paper might unlock something I wasn't ready to face. The ring sat beside it, familiar and warm now in my palm, but suddenly it felt heavier than it ever had before. Open it, Leonard said gently. His voice wasn't pushy. It was steady, certain. Like he had already seen what was inside and knew there was no way around it. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me any of this before I asked, my eyes still fixed on the envelope? Leonard exhaled slowly. Because it wasn't my place, he said. Your husband asked me not to. That hit me harder than I expected. He asked you not to tell me, I repeated. Leonard nodded. He was very clear about that, he said. He wanted you to remember the life you had together, not the burdens he carried behind it. My throat tightened. That sounded exactly like Robert. Too exactly. Always protecting. Always deciding what I should and shouldn't worry about, even when it meant shutting me out. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, gathering what little strength I had left. Then I picked up the envelope. The paper was worn at the edges, slightly yellowed with age. My name wasn't written on it, only a date in Robert's handwriting, a date I didn't recognize. Go ahead, Leonard said softly. I slid my finger under the flap and broke the seal. Inside was a folded piece of paper thicker than normal, like it had been written with care. I unfolded it slowly, my hands unsteady. And then I saw his handwriting. Robert's. The sight of it alone was enough to make my chest ache. Diana, the letter began. My vision blurred for a second, and I had to blink back tears before I could continue. If you're reading this, it means something has gone wrong. Or maybe something has finally come to light. I let out a shaky breath. Something has gone wrong. He had known. He had known that one day I would find out. I'm sorry, the letter continued. Not for loving you the way I did, but for the things I never told you. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. Behind the counter, Leonard remained silent, giving me space. There were years Robert wrote when I wasn't sure we were going to make it. Not as a family. Not financially. There were debts I took on that I never told you about because I couldn't bear to see that worry in your eyes. My grip tightened on the paper. Debts. The word echoed in my mind, overlapping with Ethan's voice from the night before. I thought I could handle it on my own, the letter went on. I thought if I worked harder, if I found a way, I could fix everything without you ever having to know. My heart sank. Of course he did. That was Robert, always carrying the weight himself. I failed more times than I can count, he admitted. There were nights I sat in this very shop across from Leonard wondering how I was going to keep our home, how I was going to keep food on the table, how I was going to make sure you and Ethan never felt the cracks forming beneath us. I looked up at Leonard, my eyes wide. He gave a small, almost sad nod. It's true, he said quietly. I looked back down at the letter. The ring Robert wrote was the only thing I had of value that I could use quickly. I hated myself every time I brought it in. Hated the idea of taking something that symbolized our life together and turning it into a transaction. My breath caught, but I also knew something else. He continued. I knew I would always come back for it. Tears streamed freely now. And I did, he wrote. Every single time. I made sure of it. No matter how hard things got, no matter how deep I was in trouble, I always found a way to bring it back to you. I pressed the paper to my chest for a moment, overwhelmed. All those times, all those quiet moments I had dismissed as nothing. They had meant everything. I never wanted you to know, Robert admitted. Because if you knew how close we came to losing everything, it would have changed the way you looked at our life. At me. My heart broke at that. Because he was wrong. Or maybe he wasn't. I wanted you to feel safe. He wrote, even when I wasn't. I wiped my eyes, trying to steady myself enough to finish. If there comes a time when this ring is gone for good, the letter continued, I hope you'll remember what it stood for, not what it was worth. My fingers tightened around the ring. It was never about the gold, he wrote. It was about the promise. The promise that no matter how hard things got, I would fight for us. My chest rose and fell unevenly. And if Ethan ever finds himself in a place where he feels like he has no way out, the letter added, I hope he learns something I took too long to understand. I froze. Ethan. Robert had written about Ethan. Don't carry it alone, the letter said. The people who love you would rather share your burden than watch you break under it. A sob escaped my lips before I could stop it. That was it. That was the message, not just for me, for him, for our son. I lowered the letter slowly, my hands shaking. For a long moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't think. All I could do was feel. The grief, the love, the regret. The realization that the man I thought I knew had been fighting battles I never even saw. And now, somehow, our son was walking the same path. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered, though Robert was no longer there to answer. He didn't want to burden you, Leonard said quietly. I let out a hollow laugh. And now it's all here anyway, I said. Leonard nodded. Sometimes, he said, the truth has a way of finding its moment. I looked down at the ring its moment. I looked down at the ring again, then at the letter, then back at Leonard. He sold it for $320, I said softly. Leonard's expression tightened slightly. I know, H.E. said. And you kept it, I added. Yes, again. Then at the letter, then back at Leonard. He sold it for $320, I said softly. Leonard's expression tightened slightly. I know, he said. And you kept it, I added. Yes. Why? He met my gaze because I knew this day would come, he said. And when it did, you deserved to have it back. My throat tightened again. And Ethan, I asked. Did he know any of this? Leonard shook his head. No, he said. To him, it was just a ring. I closed my eyes. That was the problem. That was always the problem. He didn't know. But now, he would. I folded the letter carefully, placing it back into the envelope. Then I picked up the ring and slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like it had never left. I need to go home, I said. Leonard nodded. Yes, he said. I think you do. I turned toward the door, my mind racing. Everything had changed, not just about Robert, but about Ethan. And this time, I wasn't going to let him carry it alone. The drive home felt completely different. The same streets, the same houses, the same quiet corners of Cedar Grove, but everything looked altered. As if the world itself had shifted just slightly enough for me to notice that something I once believed was solid had never been as simple as I thought. Robert, the man I had loved for over 4 decades. The man I thought I understood. The man who had quietly walked into that shop more than once, carrying the same ring I had worn every day, exchanging it for money I never knew we needed. And still, he brought it back. Every time. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I wasn't angry at him. Not really. I was hurt. Not because he had struggled, but because he had struggled alone. And now Ethan was doing the same thing. The house came into view, and I slowed the car as I pulled into the driveway. For a moment, I just sat there staring at the front door. This was where it all had to change. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now. I stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind me. Ethan, I called. No answer. But I could hear movement upstairs. Good. He was still here. I took off my coat, set my purse down, and stood there for a second, gathering my thoughts. The envelope felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. Not because of the paper, but because of what it meant. Ethan, I called again, louder this time. Footsteps. Slow. Reluctant. Then he appeared at the top of the stairs, leaning slightly against the railing. What he said. His tone wasn't as sharp as before, but it wasn't soft either. Just tired. I need you to come down here, I said. He hesitated. I already told you everything, he muttered. No, I said calmly. You didn't. Something in my voice must have reached him, because after a moment, he sighed and made his way down the stairs. He stopped a few feet away from me, arms crossed loosely like he was bracing himself. What now? He asked. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked over to the kitchen table and set the envelope down. Then slowly I slipped the ring off my finger and placed it beside it. Ethan's eyes widened slightly.
You got it back?
He asked. Yes, I said. How he asked, stepping closer. The man at the shop kept it, I said. He knew it shouldn't have been sold.
Ethan frowned, confused. That doesn't make any sense, he said. Why would he?
Because he knew your father, I interrupted.
That stopped him cold. What he said.
I looked at him, really looked at him this time, not just as the man standing in front of me, but as the boy I had raised, the son Robert had loved more than anything.
He knew your father, I repeated, better than you think.
Ethan shook his head.
No, he said. That's not Dad never mentioned.
Of course he didn't, I said quietly. There were a lot of things your father didn't mention. Silence fell between us. Ethan's eyes shifted from me to the ring, then to the envelope.
What is that?
He asked. I pushed the envelope slightly toward him. A letter, I said, from your father. His expression changed instantly. All the defensiveness, the irritation, it faded, replaced by something else. Uncertainty. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, I said, my voice steady but soft, that everything you think you know about that ring about your father isn't the whole story. He stared at me, not moving.
You're saying I should read it?
He asked. I'm saying, I replied, you need to. He hesitated. For a long moment, he didn't reach for it, and I understood why. Because once he read it, there would be no going back. Finally, slowly, he picked up the envelope. His fingers were less steady than he probably realized. Mom, he said quietly. What is this about? I took a breath. Just read it, I said. He looked at me for one last second, searching my face for something, maybe reassurance, maybe warning. Then he opened it. The room was silent except for the faint rustle of paper as he unfolded the letter. I watched him carefully. Every reaction, every flicker of emotion. At first, there was confusion, then concentration. Then something shifted. His brow furrowed. His lips parted slightly as his eyes moved faster across the page. No way, he whispered. I didn't say anything. I let the words do what they were meant to do. His hands tightened around the paper. This can't be real, he said. It is, I replied softly. He shook his head, reading further. He sold it, he said, his voice rising slightly. Dad sold it. More than once, I said. Ethan looked up at me, his eyes wide. You knew about this? He asked. No, I said. I didn't. He looked back down at the letter. I could see it happening. The shift, the slow, painful unraveling of everything he thought he understood. He was in debt. Ethan said, his voice quieter now. All those years. Yes, I said. And you didn't know? No. He swallowed hard. And he still brought it back every time. He asked. I nodded. Every time, I said. Ethan stared at the ring on the table, the same ring he had sold without a second thought. The same ring his father had fought to reclaim again and again. His breathing became uneven. I didn't know, he said. I know, I replied. I thought... He trailed off, shaking his head. I thought it was just a ring. The words hung in the air. Just a ring. I stepped closer, my voice softer now. That's the problem, I said. You didn't know what it meant. He closed his eyes for a second, as if trying to block out the realization. Then he looked back down at the letter. And this part, he said, his voice barely above a whisper.
He's talking about me.
I nodded. He is, I said. Ethan read the final lines again, slower this time. Don't carry it alone, he whispered. The words seemed to hit him differently now. Not as advice, but as something personal, something meant for him. He wrote this for me, Ethan asked. I think he did, I said. He let out a shaky breath. I messed up, he said. The simplicity of the statement made my chest ache. Yes, I said gently. You did. He nodded, staring at the table.
I thought I could fix it on my own,
he admitted.
I thought if I just got enough money.
Just like your father, I said, softly. He looked up at me, eyes filled with something raw. But he fixed it, Ethan said. I didn't. I shook my head. He didn't fix it alone, I said. He had help. He just didn't let us see it. Ethan's shoulders slumped.
I should have told you,
he said.
Yes,
I agreed.
I should have asked for help,
he added.
Yes,
I said again. Silence settled between us, but this time, it felt different. Not heavy. Not time, it felt different. Not heavy. Not suffocating. Just honest. Ethan reached out and picked up the ring. He turned it slowly between his fingers, studying it like he was seeing it for the first time.
I can't believe I sold this suffocating. Just honest.
Ethan reached out and picked up the ring. He turned it slowly between his fingers, studying it like he was seeing it for the first time.
I can't believe I sold this,
he said. I watched him carefully.
Then don't make the same mistake twice, I said.
He looked at me confused.
What do you mean? I took a deep breath.
I said this isn't just about the ring anymore. He waited. This is about what you do next, I continued. Whether you keep going down the same path or you choose something different. His grip tightened slightly.
And if I can't fix it?
He asked quietly. I stepped closer.
You won't,
I said. He blinked.
What? You won't fix it alone,
I clarified, and for the first time since all of this began, something in his expression softened. Not completely, but enough. Enough for hope to finally find its way back in. Ethan didn't speak for a long time after that. He just sat there at the kitchen table, the letter still in his hands, staring at it, like the words might change if he looked hard enough. I didn't rush him. Some truths take time to settle, especially the kind that shake the ground beneath everything you thought you understood. The clock ticked softly on the wall. Outside, a car passed by, tires brushing against the pavement. Ordinary sounds, familiar. But inside that kitchen, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Finally, Ethan exhaled slowly and set the letter down. I don't even know what to say, he admitted.
That's okay, I said gently. You don't have to say anything right now.
He shook his head, rubbing his face with both hands.
No,
he said.
I do. I have to say something.
I watched him carefully. This whole time, he continued, I thought I was the only one who messed things up like this. My brow furrowed slightly. What do you mean? I asked. He leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling for a moment before answering. I thought if Dad were still here, he would have handled everything better, he said, like he always did. My chest tightened. He didn't always handle everything. I said softly. Ethan let out a bitter laugh.
Yeah, he said. I'm starting to see that.
But there was no anger in his voice. Just realization. And somehow, he added, looking back at the letter that makes it worse. Worse, I repeated, because he was struggling and he still kept everything together, Ethan said, and I couldn't even manage my own life without falling apart. I shook my head. That's not what this says, I said. He looked at me. Yes, it does, he insisted. He had debt. He was in trouble. But he fixed it. No, I said firmly. He survived it. Ethan frowned slightly. That's not the same thing. Silence stretched between us again. Then he glanced at the ring. Can I see it? He asked. I nodded. He picked it up carefully this time, nothing like the careless way he must have handled it before. He turned it slowly between his fingers, studying it like it held answers he hadn't yet found. It looks different, he said. It doesn't, I replied. He shook his head. No, it does, he said quietly. Or maybe I do. I didn't interrupt. Before it was just something you wore, he continued. Something old, something from the past. And now I asked. He swallowed. Now it feels like I didn't interrupt. Before it was just something you wore, he continued. Something old, something from the past. And now, I asked. He swallowed. Now it feels like something I shouldn't have touched, he said. A small, sad smile tugged at my lips. That's closer, I said. He exhaled, setting the ring back down carefully. I really messed this up, he said. Yes, I said again. He glanced at me, almost surprised I hadn't softened the truth.
But I added, this doesn't have to be the end of it.
He looked down at the table.
I don't even know where to start,
he admitted.
Start with the truth, I said.
He nodded faintly.
I owe more than I told you,
he said quietly. I didn't react right away. How much? I asked. He hesitated. Then he said it.
About 12,000.
The number landed heavier than I expected. Not impossible, but not small either.
And how long has this been going on? I asked.
A year, he said. Maybe a little more. I took a slow breath, absorbing that. A year, I repeated. He nodded. I thought I could fix it early on, he said. But every time I tried it, just got worse. Just like Robert. The thought slipped into my mind before I could stop it. Different circumstances. Same pattern? And the ring, I asked. Was that your last option? He looked ashamed.
Yeah,
he said. I didn't have anything else left. I studied him for a moment. Why didn't you come to me? I asked. He gave a small, humorless laugh.
Because I didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me now,
he said. That stung.
Like what I asked. Like I disappointed you,
he said. I softened slightly. Ethan, I said you did disappoint me. He nodded, like he expected that.
But that's not all I see, I continued.
He looked up surprised.
What else do you see? He asked.
I took a step closer.
I see someone who's in trouble,
I said, and who didn't know how to ask for help. His expression shifted. Not fully, but enough. That doesn't make it okay, I added. I know, he said quickly. But it means you're not beyond fixing things, I said. He stared at me as if weighing whether to believe that.
You really think I can fix this?
He asked. I shook my head slightly. Not by yourself, I said. There it was again. The same message. The same truth Robert had tried to leave behind. Ethan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. I hate this, he said. I know, I replied. I hate that I'm the kind of person who would do something like this, he added. I studied him carefully. You're not the only one who made mistakes, I said. He frowned. That's different, he said. Dad wasn't gambling. No, I agreed. But he was still hiding things, still carrying everything alone, still making decisions without giving us the chance to stand beside him. Ethan didn't respond right away, but I could see it in his face. The connection. The uncomfortable realization that maybe he wasn't so different after all. I don't want to be like that, he said quietly. Then don't be, I said. He let out a long breath. It's not that simple, he said. No, I agreed. It's not. Silence settled again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt like something was shifting, like the ground was cracking open just enough to let something new take root. What do we do? Ethan asked finally. That word mattered. I felt it immediately. We start by figuring out exactly what you owe, I said. Not guesses, not rough numbers, everything. He nodded slowly. Then what, he asked. Then we make a plan, I said. He hesitated. And if I mess up again? He asked. I held his gaze. Then we deal with it, I said. He looked surprised. You won't just give up on me? He asked. My chest tightened. Did your father give up on us? I asked softly. He shook his head. No. Then why would I give up on you? I said. For a moment, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not anger, not defensiveness, but something closer to relief. I don't deserve that, he said. Maybe not, I replied, but you need it. He let out a shaky breath. Okay, he said. Okay, we'll do it your way. I nodded. Not my way, I corrected. Our way. He gave a small, almost hesitant nod in return. And for the first time since this all began, it felt like we weren't standing on opposite sides anymore. The next few days felt unfamiliar. Not because everything suddenly became easy, but because everything became visible. For the first time in a long time, nothing was hidden. Ethan sat at the kitchen table that afternoon with a stack of papers spread out in front of him. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan notices. The mess he had been carrying in silence was now laid out in black and white. And it was worse than he had admitted. I stood by the counter, watching him quietly. You said 12,000? I said, gently. He didn't look up. I was guessing, he admitted. How much is it really? I asked. He hesitated. Then he exhaled slowly. 17, he said. The number hit harder this time. Not just because it was bigger, but because of what it meant. More time, more stress, more consequences. Still not impossible, but no longer something that could be ignored. I nodded, slowly processing it. Okay, I said. He looked up, surprised. Okay, he repeated. Yes, I said,
Now we know. He stared at me for a second, like he was expecting anger, disappointment, something louder. Instead, I walked over and sat across from him. Tell me everything I said. He swallowed. And this time he did. It started small, just like he said. A coworker, Jason Miller, had introduced him to online betting. Sports games mostly. At first, it was just a distraction, something harmless, something that made him feel like he had control over something, even if the rest of his life felt stuck. I won a few times, he said. Just enough to think I understood it. I nodded. That's how it works, I said. He gave a small, bitter smile. Yeah, he said. I see that now. The wins didn't last. They never do. Losses followed. Then bigger bets. Then bigger losses. I kept thinking I could win it back, he said, staring at the table. Every time I lost, it felt like the next one would fix everything. And it didn't, I said. He shook his head. No, he said. It just made it worse. I listened without interrupting. This wasn't about judging him. This was about understanding the full shape of the problem. And the debt, I asked. Credit cards, he said. Personal loan. And some money I borrowed from someone I shouldn't have. That made my stomach tighten. What do you mean? I asked carefully. He hesitated again. Just someone from work, he said. It's fine. No, I said firmly. It's not fine. He sighed. I owe him $2,000, he admitted. And he's okay with that, I asked. Ethan looked away. He's not thrilled, he said. That was putting it lightly. I leaned back in my chair, thinking. All right, I said after a moment. We're going to break this down. Ethane're going to break this down. Ethan looked up. How, he asked. Step by step, I said. No shortcuts, no guesses. He nodded slowly. First, I continued, we list every single debt. Exact amounts, interest rates, due dates. He glanced at the papers. I've got most of it here, he said. Good, I replied. Second, we figure out your income. What you bring in every month after taxes. He nodded again. Then we figure out what's going out, I added. Everything. Rent, food, gas, anything unnecessary. He gave a small, uneasy smile. That's going to hurt, he said. Yes, I said. It will. But I didn't soften it, because this part needed to be real. And the betting, I asked. His expression changed instantly. I'm done, he said quickly. I held his gaze. Are you? I asked. He hesitated. That was answer enough. I want to be, he said quietly. That's not the same thing, I replied. He looked down again. I know, he said. Silence settled for a moment. Then I reached across the table and gently turned the papers toward me. Addiction doesn't go away because you decide it should, I said. It needs structure, support, accountability. He looked up at me uneasy. You think I'm addicted? He asked. I met his eyes. I think you've lost control, I said. He didn't argue, because he knew. We'll find help for that too, I added. He exhaled slowly. Okay, he said, that word again. Okay. It didn't mean everything was solved, but it meant he wasn't running from it anymore. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything, line by line, dollar by dollar. By the end of it, the numbers weren't just numbers anymore. They were a plan, not a perfect one, but a start. You're going to have to make some changes, I said. I figured, he replied. No more betting, I said. He nodded. None, I repeated. I said I get it, he said a little more firmly this time. I studied him for a moment. Then prove it, I said. He didn't respond, But he didn't look away either. That means cutting off access? I continued. Deleting apps, blocking sites, staying away from people who pull you back into it. He frowned slightly. Jason, he said. Yes, I said. He sighed. That's going to be awkward, he admitted. It's going to be necessary. I replied. He nodded slowly. What about the money I owe him? He asked. We'll include it in the plan, I said, but you're not going to handle it alone. He looked at me again. You really mean that, don't you? He said. Yes. I said, no matter what, I replied. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. I don't know why you're doing this, he said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. What do you mean, I asked. After what I did, he said. After the ring, everything. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I reached over and picked up the ring from the table. I held it between us. Because of this, I said. He frowned. That doesn't make sense, he said. It does, I replied. You just don't see it yet. I slipped the ring back onto my finger. Your father made mistakes, I said. Big ones I didn't even know about until now. Ethan listened carefully. But he never stopped trying, I continued. And he never gave up on us. I met his eyes. And I'm gave up on us. I met his eyes. And I'm not going to give up on you. His expression softened again. Not completely, but enough. Enough to see the shift. I don't want to be like this anymore, he said quietly. Then don't be, I said. He let out a long breath. Okay, not going to give up on you. His expression softened again. Not completely, but enough. Enough to see the shift. I don't want to be like this anymore, he said quietly. Then don't be, I said. He let out a long breath. Okay, he said again. This time it sounded different, less uncertain, more decided. And for the first time since all of this began, it felt like we were finally moving forward. Change didn't happen overnight. I think that was the hardest part for Ethan to accept. After that conversation, after the plan was written down and the numbers were clear, there was a moment, just a brief one, where it felt like everything might somehow fix itself simply because we had faced it. But life doesn't work that way. The next morning, reality returned. Ethan sat at the kitchen table again, staring at his phone like it had suddenly become something dangerous. What is it? I asked, pouring coffee. He hesitated. Jason, he said. Texting? I asked. He nodded. What does he want? I said. Ethan let out a slow breath. He's asking about the money, he said. Of course he was. Problems don't wait politely for you to get ready. They come knocking the moment you open your eyes. Have you answered him? I asked. No, Ethan said. I didn't know what to say. I walked over and sat down across from him. Then we figure it out, I said. He looked at me uneasy. I don't want to make it worse, he admitted. You won't, I said. Not if you're honest. He let out a small, uncertain laugh. That's new for me lately, he said. I didn't smile. Then it's time to get used to it, I replied. He nodded slowly, then looked back down at his phone. After a few seconds, he started typing. I watched his face carefully. The hesitation, the second-guessing, the urge to delete and rewrite. This wasn't just about money. It was about changing how he handled pressure. After a minute, he stopped. "What did you say?" I asked. He turned the phone slightly so I could see. "I told him I'm working on a plan," he said, "and that he'll start making payments next week." I nodded. "That's good," I said. "He's not going to like it," Ethan added. "He doesn't have to like it," I said. "He just has to understand it." Ethan swallowed. "And if he doesn't?" he asked. I held his gaze. "Then we deal with that too," I said. He leaned back, slightly exhaling. It wasn't confidence, but it wasn't panic either. It was something in between. And for now, that was enough. The phone buzzed in his hand. Jason had replied. Ethan's eyes flicked across the screen, his expression tightening. "What did he say?" I asked. "He wants his money sooner," Ethan said. "Says he's already been patient." I nodded. "That's expected," I said. Ethan looked up at me. "What do I do?" he asked. "You stay calm," I said, "and you stay consistent." He frowned slightly. "That doesn't feel like enough," he admitted. "It's not about feeling," I replied. "It's about control." He stared at me for a second, then nodded again. "Okay," he said quietly. That word again. But this time, it came with tension. Because this part wasn't just about admitting the problem. It was about facing consequences. Real ones. Over the next few days, the plan began to take shape. Ethan cut off every betting app on his phone. Not just deleted them, blocked them. We sat together while he installed restrictions, set passwords, and removed every easy path back to the habit that had nearly taken everything from him. "Feels like I'm locking myself out," he said at one point. "You are," I replied. He gave a small, tired smile. "Guess I need that," he said. "Yes," I said. "You do." He also stopped seeing Jason. That was harder. I could tell. Not because Jason was a good influence, but because he was familiar. Comfortable. A reminder of the version of Ethan that didn't have to face responsibility. Breaking away from that meant facing himself. One evening, Ethan stood by the door, keys in hand. "I'm supposed to meet him," he said. "Do you have to?" I asked. He hesitated. "No," he admitted. "Then don't," I said. He stood there for a moment longer. Then slowly, he set the keys down. "I don't trust myself yet," he said. "That's honest?" I replied. He nodded, and that mattered more than anything else. But not everything went smoothly. One night, about a week into all of this, I woke up to the sound of movement downstairs. It was past midnight. The house was quiet, but not silent. I got out of bed and walked toward the stairs, my heart beating just a little faster. "Ethan," I called softly. No answer. I stepped into the living room, and there he was, sitting on the couch, staring at his phone. The screen's light reflected in his eyes. "What are you doing?" I asked. He looked up quickly, startled. "Nothing," he said too fast. I walked closer. "Ethan," I said. He hesitated. Then slowly he turned the phone toward me. It was a betting site, not logged in, but open. My chest tightened. "I didn't do anything," he said quickly. "I swear, I opened it. I didn't yell, didn't react the way I might have before. Instead, I sat down across from him." "Why?" "But open." My chest tightened. "I didn't do anything," he said quickly. "I swear, I opened it. I didn't yell, didn't react the way I might have before. Instead, I sat down across from him. Why, I asked quietly. He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know," he said. "I couldn't sleep. My mind kept going back to the money, the debt." Instead, I sat down across from him. Why, I asked quietly. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know, he said. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept going back to the money, the debt, everything. I nodded, and this felt like an escape, I said. He swallowed. Yeah, he admitted. We sat in silence for a moment. This is the part people don't see, I said. The part where it's hardest. He looked down. I almost logged in, he said. But you didn't, I replied. He shook his head. No, he said. I didn't. I studied him carefully. That matters, I said. He looked up surprised. It does? He asked. Yes, I said, because this isn't about being perfect. It's about stopping before you fall. He let out a shaky breath. I hate how easy it is to go back, he said. It's always easy, I replied. That's why it's dangerous. He nodded slowly. Then without another word, he closed the site and set his phone face down on the e-table. I'm trying, he said. I know. It's always easy, I replied. That's why it's dangerous. He nodded slowly. Then without another word, he closed the site and set his phone face down on the table. I'm trying, he said. I know, I replied, and for the first time, I believed it. Not because he said it, but because he stopped himself when it mattered most. That night wasn't a failure. It was a turning point, a quiet one, but real. And sometimes those are the ones that change everything. Progress didn't feel like victory. It felt like discipline. Every morning, Ethan woke up earlier than he used to. Not because he suddenly became motivated overnight, but because he needed structure. Something to replace the chaos he had been living in for the past year. He started writing things down, not just numbers, thoughts, triggers, moments when the urge crept in. At first, I didn't say anything about it. I just watched. And quietly. I was proud of him, but that didn't mean everything was getting easier. In fact, in some ways, it was getting harder. Because now there were no distractions left, no illusions, no one more bet to fix everything. Just reality. And reality can be exhausting. One afternoon, about 2 weeks into our new routine, I found Ethan sitting on the back porch, staring out at the yard. He didn't notice me at first. His shoulders were tense, his hands clasped tightly together. Hey, I said softly. He looked up startled. Oh, he said. Hey. I stepped outside and sat down across from him. What's going on? I asked. He hesitated. Nothing, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Try again, I replied. He sighed. It's just everything, he admitted. I nodded. That's not very specific, I said gently. He let out a small, frustrated laugh. I know, he said. I feel like I'm doing everything right now and it still doesn't feel like enough. That hit me harder than I expected, because I knew that feeling. Too well. What happened? I asked. He leaned back in his chair, staring up at the sky. I got my credit card statement today, he said. Even after making a payment, it barely moved. I nodded slowly. That's how interest works, I said. Yeah, he said. It's like trying to dig myself out of a hole, but the dirt keeps falling back in. I didn't rush to fix it, because some feelings need to be acknowledged before they can be changed. That's frustrating, I said. Yeah. he replied quietly. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he spoke again. And Jason texted me again, he added. I turned toward him. What did he say? I asked. He wants to meet, Ethan said. In person. My stomach tightened slightly, and I asked. Ethan shrugged. I told him I'd think about it, he said. I studied him carefully. What are you thinking? I asked. He hesitated. I don't know, he admitted. Part of me thinks I should just face it. Get it over with. And the other part, I asked. He looked down at his hands. The other part thinks that's a really bad idea. He hesitated. I don't know, he admitted. Part of me thinks I should just face it. Get it over with. And the other part, I asked. He looked down at his hands. The other part thinks that's a really bad idea, he said. I nodded. That second part is right, I said. He gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, he said. I figured you'd say that. I'm not saying you avoid him forever, I clarified. But you don't put yourself in a situation where you're vulnerable. He frowned slightly. Vulnerable, how he asked. I leaned forward slightly. You're still early in this, I said. You're still rebuilding control. Meeting someone who is part of the problem, especially in person. Vulnerable, how he asked. I leaned forward slightly. You're still early in this, I said. You're still rebuilding control. Meeting someone who is part of the problem, especially in person, that's a risk. He nodded slowly. I didn't think about it like that, he admitted. That's why you're not doing this alone, I said. He glanced at me, then back at the yard. So, what do I do? He asked. You set boundaries, I said. He exhaled. I've never been good at that, he admitted. I know, I said. That's why we start now. He looked back at me. What does that even look like? He asked. It looks like telling him you're working on a repayment plan, I said. That you'll communicate, but only on your terms. Not his. Ethan frowned. He's not going to like that, he said. He doesn't have to, I replied. He shook his head slightly. I'm not used to saying no, he admitted. I gave a small, understanding nod. Then this is your first lesson, I said. He let out a long breath. Okay, he said. But this time the word didn't sound as steady. Because this wasn't just about numbers anymore. It was about changing who he had been. And that's always harder. That evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table again, his phone in front of him. I stayed nearby, not hovering, but present. He typed slowly, paused, deleted, started again. Finally, he hit send. What did you say? I asked. He looked up. I told him I'm not meeting in person, he said, that I'll send payments weekly and keep him updated. I nodded. That's good, I said. He swallowed. I also said, if that's not enough, we can handle it legally. He added. I raised an eyebrow slightly. That was bold, I said. He gave a nervous laugh. Yeah, he said. My hands were shaking when I typed it. That's normal, I replied. The phone buzzed almost immediately. Ethan flinched slightly before picking it up. His eyes scanned the message quickly. Well, I asked. He let out a breath. He's not happy, he said. But he said fine. For now. I nodded slowly. That's all we need, I said. For now, Ethan repeated. There was something about the way he said it. Not fear, but awareness. Like he finally understood that this wasn't going to disappear overnight. That it would take time, consistency, patience, and a lot of uncomfortable moments. I hate that I let it get this far, he said quietly. I looked at him. I know, I said, but you're not there anymore, I added. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, the version of you who let it spiral this far. I said. You're not him anymore. He stared at me, unsure. I don't feel that different, he admitted. You won't, I said. Not yet. He looked down at his hands. Then how do I know I've changed? He asked. I thought about that for a moment. Then I said the only honest answer I had. You don't, I said. He looked up surprised. Not at first, I continued. You just keep choosing differently until one day you realize you're not the same person anymore. He was quiet after that, but not lost. Not like before. More like thinking, processing, becoming. And as I watched him sitting there, still uncertain, still imperfect, but no longer running, I realized something. This wasn't just about fixing a mistake. This was about rebuilding a life. And for the first time, it felt like we were actually doing it. Together. There's a moment in every difficult journey where progress stops feeling like progress. It happened about 3 weeks in. Not because Ethan had done something wrong, but because reality began to press in harder than before. The first payment went out. It wasn't much. Barely enough to make a dent in what he owed, but it was something. Still, it didn't feel like enough. That evening, Ethan came home later than usual. I was in the living room reading when I heard the door open and close more quietly than normal. Not careful, just heavy. Ethan, I called. No answer. I set the book down and stood up, walking toward the kitchen. He was there, leaning against the counter, staring down at nothing. His shoulders were tense again. What happened? I asked gently. He didn't respond right away. Then he let out a breath that sounded more like defeat than exhaustion. I got pulled into a meeting today, he said. What kind of meeting? I asked. He rubbed his face. Work, he said. My manager, HR, some compliance guy. My stomach tightened. And I asked carefully. Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. They know, he said. A cold wave moved through me. Know what I asked? He looked at me. About the money, he said. About Jason. My chest tightened. How? I asked. Ethan shook his head. Jason reported it, he said. Said I borrowed money from him and didn't pay it back on time. I felt a flicker of anger. Not explosive, but sharp. And your workplace has a policy about that, I said. Yeah, Ethan replied. Apparently borrowing money between employees, especially when it affects performance, is a violation. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course it was. And what does that mean for you? I asked. He hesitated. They're reviewing my position, he said. The words hung in the air, heavy, dangerous. How serious is it? I asked. Ethan swallowed. I could lose my job, he said. The room felt smaller suddenly, not just because of the risk, but because of everything that depended on that job now. The plan, the payments, the future he was trying to rebuild. All of it rested on something that was now unstable. I didn't think he'd go that far, Ethan added quietly. I looked at him. That's why we don't rely on what other people might do, I said. He nodded slowly. I know, he said. I thought if I started paying him back, it would calm things down. That's why we don't rely on what other people might do, I said. He nodded slowly. I know, he said. I thought if I started paying him back, it would calm things down. It might have, I said, but not everyone plays fair when they feel wronged. He leaned back against the counter, staring at the ceiling. I really messed this up, he said again. This time, the weight of it was different, because now the consequences were expanding. It's not over yet, I said. He looked at me. It kind of feels like it is, he admitted. I stepped closer. Did they fire you? I asked. No, he said. Did they suspend you? No. Then it's not over, I said. He stared at me for a moment, then nodded slightly. I have a follow-up meeting in 2 days, he said. They said I need to explain everything. I took a slow breath. Then we prepare, I said. He frowned. Prepare how? He asked. The same way we've been handling everything, I said, with the truth. He let out a small, uneasy laugh. Yeah, because that's been going great so far, he muttered. I didn't react to the tone. Ethan, I said calmly, what's the alternative? He didn't answer. Because there wasn't one. If you lie, I continued, they'll see through it. If you avoid it, they'll assume the worst. He sighed. I know, he said. So we go in honest, I said. Clear. Responsible. He looked down at his hands. I don't know if that's enough, he admitted. It might not be, I said. That made him look up. You're not even going to pretend it will be, he asked. No, I said, because this wasn't the time for false comfort. But it's your best chance, I added. He held my gaze, and slowly he nodded. Okay, he said, that word again. But now it carried fear. The next 2 days were tense, not chaotic, not dramatic, just quiet tension. Ethan practiced what he would say. Over and over. Sometimes out loud, sometimes just in his head. I made a mistake, he said one evening. No, I made multiple mistakes. I listened from the kitchen as he paced in the living room. I take responsibility, he tried again. I'm actively working to fix it. He stopped, frustrated. It sounds rehearsed, he said. It's supposed to, I replied. He looked at me. But it doesn't feel real, he added. I walked over and stood in front of him. Then stop trying to sound perfect, I said. He frowned. What do you mean? Say it the way it actually feels, I said. He way it actually feels, I said. He hesitated. Then he took a breath. I messed up, he said. I thought I could fix things on my own, and I made it worse, but I'm trying to fix it now. I nodded. That's real, Aided. Then he took a breath. I messed up, he said. I thought I could fix things on my own, and I made it worse. But I'm trying to fix it now. I nodded. That's real, I said. He exhaled. Yeah, he said quietly. The night before the meeting, I found him sitting alone again, not with his phone, not with papers, just sitting, thinking. You ready? I asked. He shook his head. No, he said. I smiled slightly. That's normal, I replied. He looked at me. What if they don't believe me? He asked. I thought about that for a moment. Then you keep telling the truth anyway, I said. He frowned. That doesn't fix anything, he said. No, I agreed, but it makes sure you don't lose yourself trying to fix it. He was quiet after that. Then he nodded. I don't want to go back, he said. You won't, I replied. He looked at me. How do you know? He asked. I held his gaze. Because you stopped running, I said. That was the difference. Not perfection, not success, just staying, facing things, even when it hurt. The next morning, Ethan stood at the door keys in hand, just like before. But this time, it felt different. Not like he was avoiding something, but like he was walking into it. I'll call you after, he said. I'll be here, I replied. He nodded. Then he stepped outside. And for the first time since all of this began, I wasn't afraid of what would happen next. Because no matter what happened in that meeting, he was finally becoming someone who could face it. The house felt unusually quiet that morning. Not peaceful, not calm, just waiting. I tried to distract myself. I made coffee, then didn't drink it. I picked up a book, then reread the same paragraph 3 times without understanding a single word. My eyes kept drifting to the clock. Ethan should have called by now. My fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table. I told myself not to panic. Not yet. He said he would call after the meeting, and meetings take time. Still, something didn't feel right. Just as I was about to reach for my phone, it rang. My heart jumped. Ethan! I answered quickly. There was a pause on the other end. Then his voice came through. Yeah, he said. But something about it was off. Not broken, not panicked, just quiet. Too quiet. How did it go? I asked carefully. Another pause. Can I come home first? He said. My chest tightened. Of course, I replied immediately. Are you okay? I will be, he said. That wasn't an answer, but it was enough. I'll be here, I said softly. He hung up without another word. I stood there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand. I will be, not I am. That difference mattered. The next 20 minutes felt longer than the entire week before it. When I finally heard the car pull into the driveway, I was already standing by the door. He stepped inside slowly. No rush, no energy, just wait. Hey, I said gently. He nodded, avoiding my eyes. Hey, I didn't push right away. Do you want to sit? I asked. He nodded again. We moved to the living room, sitting across from each other. The silence stretched. Finally, I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since the call. What happened? Ethan exhaled slowly, leaning forward, his hands clasped together. They didn't fire me, he said. Relief flickered through me, but I held it back. There was more, but I prompted softly. They put me on probation, he continued. Official review for 90 days. I nodded. That was serious, but not final. And I asked. They cut my responsibilities, he added, reduced access, and my hours. That hit harder. Less income, less stability, more pressure. How much, I asked? About 20%, he said quietly. I leaned back slightly, absorbing it. That's manageable, I said after a moment. I said after a moment. He looked up surprised. Manageable, he repeated. Yes, I said. Not ideal, but not impossible. He shook his head slightly. You didn't hear the rest, he said. My stomach tightened again. What else up surprised? Manageable, he repeated. Yes, I said. Not ideal, but not impossible. He shook his head slightly. You didn't hear the rest, he said. My stomach tightened again. What else, I asked. He hesitated. They said if there's any further issue, anything at all. I'm done, he said. There it was, the edge, the line he couldn't cross again. Silence settled between us, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was focused. So, I said slowly, you still have your job. For now, he said. For now is enough, I replied. He let out a small, tired breath. I thought they were going to fire me, he admitted. I know, I said. I walked into that room and He paused, searching for the words. I felt like everything I've done wrong was about to catch up with me all at once. I nodded, and I asked, and I told them the truth he said. I studied him. All of it, I asked. He nodded. Everything he said. The betting, the debt, borrowing money from Jason, trying to fix it on my own. My chest tightened slightly, but not with fear, with something closer to pride. And how did they respond? I asked. They didn't interrupt, he said. They just listened. He paused. Then my manager asked me one question. What was it I asked? Ethan swallowed. He said, "Why should we trust you to handle responsibility again?" The question hung in the air. Sharp. Direct. Unavoidable. What did you say I asked? Ethan looked down at his hands. I told him he shouldn't, he said quietly. That surprised me. And then I asked. I said, trust isn't something I can ask for right now, he continued. It's something I have to earn back. I didn't say anything. Because that answer was different. That's when they decided on probation, he added. I nodded slowly. That was the right answer, I said. He looked up at me. You think so? He asked. Yes, I said, because it was honest. He leaned back, exhaling. I don't feel like I won anything, he admitted. You didn't, I said. He frowned slightly. That's not very encouraging, he muttered. This wasn't about winning, I replied. It was about not losing everything. He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Yeah, he said. That makes sense. We sat in silence again, but this time it felt different, less uncertain, more grounded. What about Jason? I asked after a moment. Ethan's expression tightened slightly. They spoke to him too, he said. And I asked. He confirmed everything Ethan said, but he also said I started paying him back. I nodded. That helped, I said. Yeah, Ethan replied. I think it did. He paused. But I don't think he did it to help me, he added. Probably not, I said. Ethan gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, he said. Silence again. Then he looked at me. What now? He asked, that question again. But this time it carried less fear, more direction. Now, I said, we adjust. He frowned slightly. To what, he asked. To the new reality, I replied. I reached for the notebook we had been using. Your income changed, I said, so the plan changes. He nodded slowly. Okay, he said. We tighten expenses. I continued. Prioritize the most important payments. Stay consistent. He leaned forward slightly. And the rest? He asked. The rest will take time, I said. He let out a breath. Starting to hate that word, he admitted. Time, I asked. Yeah, he said. Everything takes time. I gave a small, understanding smile. That's because anything worth fixing does, I said. He nodded. I guess, he said. I watched him for a moment. You did something important today, I said. He looked up. What? He asked. You stood in a room where you could have lost everything, and you didn't run, I said. He was quiet. That matters, I added. He looked down again. I didn't feel brave, he said. You don't have to feel brave to be brave, I replied. He sat with that for a moment, then slowly he nodded. And for the first time since he walked through that door, the weight on his shoulders looked just a little lighter. Not gone, but lighter. And sometimes that's enough to keep going. The next phase wasn't dramatic. There were no sudden breakthroughs, no miraculous solutions, just consistency. And for someone like Ethan, consistency was harder than any crisis he had faced so far. Because crises demand action. Consistency demands discipline. Weeks passed. Not quickly, not smoothly, but steadily. Ethan followed the plan. Every week he made a payment small but consistent. He tracked every dollar he spent. He checked in with me regularly, not because I forced him to, but because he chose to. And that choice mattered more than anything else. But pressure doesn't disappear just because you're doing the right thing. It builds, quietly, slowly, until one day it shows up again. It happened on a Thursday evening. Ethan came home earlier than usual. Too early. I noticed it immediately. You're home early, I said, looking up from the kitchen. He nodded, dropping his keys on the counter. Yeah, he said. Something was off, again. What happened? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over and leaned against the counter, staring at nothing. They called me into another meeting, he said finally. My chest tightened slightly. With HR, I asked. He shook his head. No, he said. Just my manager this time. That was different. And I asked carefully. Ethan exhaled slowly. He said they've been watching my progress, he said. I waited, and I prompted again. Ethan hesitated. Then he looked at me. They offered me a chance to take on more responsibility again, he said. For a second, I didn't react. Not because I didn't understand, but because I wanted to make sure I heard it correctly. They what? I asked. They said if I'm willing, he continued, they'll start restoring some of my duties. Slowly. Relief flickered through me, but I didn't let it turn into celebration just yet. That's a good sign, I said carefully. Ethan nodded. Yeah, he said. I think so too. But something in his voice didn't match the words. What's wrong? I asked. He gave a small, uneasy laugh. I don't know if I'm ready, he admitted. That surprised me. You've been working toward this? I said. I know, he replied. But what if I mess it up again? There it was. Not doubt in the opportunity, doubt in himself. I walked over and stood in front of him. Do you want the responsibility back? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Yes, he said. Then what's the real fear? I asked. He swallowed. That I'll prove them right for doubting me, he said. I nodded slowly. That's not a reason to stay where you are, I said. He frowned slightly. It's a reason to be careful, he argued. Yes, I agreed, but not a reason to hold yourself back. He looked down at his hands. I don't feel like I've earned it yet, he said. I studied him carefully. That's exactly why you have, I replied. He looked up confused. What do you mean? He asked. Because you're not chasing it for the wrong reasons anymore, I said. He was quiet. You're not trying to prove something, I continued. You're trying to do it right. He let that sink in, slowly. You think that's enough? He asked. It's a start, I said. He nodded. Okay, he said quietly. That word again. But now it carried something new. Not just acceptance, not just fear, but growth. The next morning, Ethan went to work earlier than usual. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. I noticed that, and I didn't say anything. Because some things don't need to be said. They just need to be seen. Over the next few days, I watched the shift. Subtle, but real. Ethan took on small responsibilities first. Nothing overwhelming, nothing risky, but enough to test him, enough to prove to himself more than anyone else that he could handle it. And he did, not perfectly, but consistently, and that was enough. One evening, about a month after everything had started to change, something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Neither was Ethan. I'll get it, he said, walking toward the door. I stayed in the kitchen listening. There was a pause. Then I heard Ethan's voice. Hey. But it wasn't casual. It was tense. Careful. I stepped closer just enough to see. Jason was standing at the door. For a moment, everything in me tightened. Not fear, not exactly, but something close to it. This was the part we hadn't fully resolved yet. What are you doing here? Ethan asked. Jason shrugged. Just wanted to talk, he said. Ethan hesitated. Then he stepped outside, closing the door behind him. I stayed where I was, not eavesdropping, but not leaving either, because some conversations matter too much to ignore. Through the window, I could see them, standing a few feet apart. Jason spoke first. I couldn't hear everything, but I could read enough from his posture. Frustration, impatience, control. Ethan listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react the way he might have before. That alone told me everything had changed. Then Ethan spoke. Calm. Steady. Not defensive. Not aggressive. Just clear. Jason shook his head, clearly not satisfied. He said something sharper this time. I saw Ethan pause. For just a second. And in that second, I held my breath. Because that was the moment. The old Ethan would have reacted, defended, argued, escaped. But this Ethan... He said something sharper this time. I saw Ethan pause. For just a second. And in that second, I held my breath. Because that was the moment. The old Ethan would have reacted, defended, argued, escaped. But this Ethan didn't. He stood there, listened, and then he said something I couldn't hear. But whatever it was, Jason stopped talking. Completely. There was a long pause. Then Jason gave a small, dismissive shrug, turned, and walked away. Just like that. Ethan stood there for a moment longer. Then he came back inside. I met him halfway. What happened? I asked. He exhaled slowly. He wanted everything paid faster. He said, and I asked. I told him no. Ethan said, simple, clear, final. I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, something stronger, respect. And he accepted that I asked. Ethan gave a small smile. He didn't like it, he said, but he accepted it. I nodded slowly. That mattered, more than the money, more than the debt. Because that wasn't just about Jason. That was about control, about boundaries, about who Ethan was becoming. I didn't feel scared, he added quietly. I looked at him. That's new, I said. Yeah, he replied, And in that moment, I realized something. We weren't just fixing a mistake anymore. We were watching a transformation. And for the first time since this all began, I knew how it would end. Not perfectly, not easily, but right. The shift didn't come all at once. It revealed itself slowly, through small, almost unnoticeable moments that, when added together, became something undeniable. Ethan was changing, not just in what he did, but in how he thought, how he responded, how he carried himself. And the most surprising part, he started to notice it before I did. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when he brought it up. We were sitting in the living room, the kind of calm that only comes after weeks of tension, finally settling into something more stable. "I think I understand something now," he said suddenly. I looked up from my book. "What's that?" I asked. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Why Dad never told you," he said. The words caught me off guard. I closed the book slowly. "Why do you think that I asked?" He hesitated. "Because I almost did the same thing," he admitted. My chest tightened slightly. How I asked. He turned his head toward me. "There were moments before all of this came out," he said, when I thought about just fixing everything quietly. I listened carefully. "I thought if I could just get ahead again, pay everything off, clean it up, you'd never have to know," he continued. I swallowed. "That sounds familiar," I said softly. He nodded. "Yeah," he said, "it does." Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable, just reflective. "But here's the part I didn't understand before," he added. I waited. "It's not about protecting someone," he said. "It's about avoiding being seen at your worst." That hit deeper than I expected, because it was true, painfully true. I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. "You're right," I said finally. He looked at me. "I used to think Dad was stronger than me," Ethan continued, "that he handled things better." I didn't interrupt, but now he paused. "I think he was just better at hiding it." I nodded slowly. "And that's not strength," he added. "That's just carrying too much alone." The words lingered in the air, heavy, honest. "You've learned something important," I said. He gave a small smile. "Yeah," he said, "the hard way." "That's usually how it happens," I replied. We sat in silence again. Then he reached into his pocket. "I wanted to show you something," he said. My brow furrowed slightly. "What is it?" I asked. He pulled out a small piece of paper, folded, carefully. He handed it to me. "What's this?" I asked. "Just open it," he said. I unfolded it slowly. It was a receipt, but not like the one from before. This one was newer, cleaner. And at the top, in bold letters, Hayes Jewelry and Restoration. My heart skipped. "What is this?" I asked, my voice quieter now. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I went back there," he said. I looked up at him. "When I asked." "Yesterday," he replied. "Why I asked?" He hesitated. "Because I felt like I needed to understand it for myself," he said. I studied him, and I asked. He took a breath. "I talked to Leonard," he said. "About Dad." My fingers tightened slightly around the receipt. What did he say? I asked. Ethan's expression softened. He told me stories, he said. Things I never knew. I felt something stir inside me. What kind of stories? I asked. Ethan looked down for a moment. About how Dad used to come in late, he said, after closing sometimes, just sitting there trying to figure things out. My chest tightened. He said Dad never acted desperate, Ethan continued. Even when he probably was. He just stayed calm. That sounded exactly like Robert. He also said something else, Ethan added. What? I asked. Ethan looked at me. He said Dad never once talked about the ring like it was just jewelry, he said. I swallowed. What did he say? I asked. Ethan hesitated. He said Dad always called it my promise, he said quietly. The words hit me like a wave. My promise. I pressed the receipt lightly against my chest, trying to steady myself. And this? I asked, holding it up. Ethan gave a small, almost nervous smile. That's for something else, he said. My brow furrowed again. What do you mean? I asked. He leaned forward, reaching into his other pocket, and then he placed something on the table between us. A small box. Velvet. Dark blue. My breath caught. Ethan, I whispered. Open it, he said. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for it. For a moment, I just held it there, because I already knew, or at least I thought I did. Slowly, I opened the lid. Inside was the ring. My ring. But something was different. At first, I couldn't place it. Then I saw it. A subtle engraving on the inside band, something that hadn't been there before. What is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan smiled softly. I had it engraved, he said. I turned the ring carefully, trying to read the tiny letters. And then I saw it. We carry it together. My vision blurred instantly. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. Ethan, I whispered. I know I can't undo what I did, he said, and I know I don't deserve to just move past it. I looked up at him. But I wanted to change what it means going forward, he continued. My chest tightened. Dad carried everything alone, he said. I tried to do the same thing, and it almost destroyed everything. A tear slipped down my cheek. But I don't want that to be our story anymore, he added. I closed my eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. So this? He gestured toward the ring. This isn't just about the past anymore. I looked back down at it. At the words, at the meaning. It's about what we choose now, he said. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't heavy. It was full, complete. I slid the ring. It was full, complete. I slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, just like it always had. But now, it felt different. Not because it had changed, but because we had. I looked up at Ethan, and for the first time, onto my finger. It fit perfectly, just like it always had. But now, it felt different. Not because it had changed, but because we had. I looked up at Ethan, and for the first time, I didn't just see my son. I saw someone who had fallen, faced it, and chosen to stand back up. And that meant everything. It didn't end with a big moment. No dramatic announcement. No perfect resolution where everything suddenly fell into place. Instead, it ended the way real healing often does. Quietly, steadily, one decision at a time. Months passed, not without difficulty, not without moments where the weight of everything felt like it might return. But something fundamental had changed. Ethan didn't run anymore. That alone changed everything. The probation period at work stretched on longer than either of us would have liked, but he stayed consistent. Every week, he showed up early, took on responsibilities carefully, asked questions instead of pretending to have answers. And most importantly, he didn't try to do it alone. There were still hard days. Days when the numbers didn't seem to move fast enough. Days when exhaustion crept in and whispered that it would be easier to stop trying. Days when the past came back, not to haunt him, but to remind him of how far he had fallen. But those days didn't break him anymore. Because now he had something he didn't have before. Support, accountability, and the willingness to be seen, not just at his best, but at his worst, too. One evening, about 3 months after everything had changed, Ethan walked through the front door with something I hadn't seen in a long time. A genuine smile, not forced, not cautious, real. "How was work?" I asked, watching him set his keys down. He let out a breath. "Different," he said. That caught my attention. "Different how?" I asked. He walked into the kitchen, leaning lightly against the counter. "They ended the probation," he said. For a moment, I didn't react, because I wanted to make sure I heard him correctly. "They did?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah," he said, "this morning." Relief moved through me, not sudden or overwhelming, but deep and steady. "That's wonderful," I said softly. He smiled again, but this time, there was something more in it. Not just relief, pride. "I didn't think I'd get here," he admitted. "I did," I said. He shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "You believed I could get here. That's different." I smiled faintly. "That's what believing is," I said. He leaned back, crossing his arms loosely. "They restored my position," he added. "Not completely yet, but close." I nodded. "That's earned," I said. He looked at me. "You really think so?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "Because you didn't just fix the problem. You changed how you handle it." He was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I think I did." We stood there in comfortable silence. The kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then he reached into his pocket. "Also," he said, pulling something out, "this is for you." I raised an eyebrow. "For me?" I asked. He nodded. I stepped closer, looking at what he held. It wasn't a box this time. It wasn't something expensive or dramatic. Just a simple envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," he said. I smiled slightly. "That sounds familiar," I said. He laughed quietly. "Yeah," he said. "I guess it does." I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a piece of paper, a statement. I read it slowly, then again. And then I looked up at him. "You paid it off?" I asked. He nodded. "All of it," he said. $17,000. Gone. Not erased, not magically fixed, but paid, earned, resolved. My chest tightened, but not with pain this time, with something deeper. "You didn't tell me," I said. He smiled softly. "I wanted to show you," he said. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "Ethan," I whispered. "I didn't do it alone," he added quickly. "I followed the plan. I stayed consistent. I got help when I needed it. I nodded, my vision blurring slightly. That's the point, I said. He stepped closer. I understand that now, he said. We stood there for a moment, not saying anything. Because sometimes there's nothing left to say. Later that evening, I sat by the window, the ring resting on my finger. The engraving caught the light softly. We carry it together. I turned it slowly, thinking about everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the truth, the healing, and the realization that what we almost lost wasn't the ring. It was each other. Ethan stepped into the room, quietly sitting across from me. You okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, I said. I was just thinking about what he asked. I looked at him, about how close we came to losing everything I said. He nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. Me too. Silence settled again, but this time it was peaceful. I'm glad we didn't, he added. I smiled softly. Me too, I said, and in that moment I realized something. The ring was never the story. It was just the symbol. The real story was what we chose to do when everything started to fall apart. We didn't let it. Not completely. We faced it. Together. After everything that happened, I've come to understand something I wish I had known much earlier in life. Love is not proven in perfect moments. It's proven in the difficult ones. In the moments when things fall apart, when trust is broken, when mistakes are made that seem too big to fix. That's where real love shows up. Not by ignoring the problem, not by pretending everything is fine, but by choosing to stay, to face it, to rebuild piece by piece. My husband thought he was protecting me by carrying everything alone. My son thought he could fix everything the same way. And both of them were wrong. Because strength isn't about how much you can carry by yourself. It's about knowing when to let someone stand beside you. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like you had to handle everything alone, you don't, and you shouldn't. The people who truly love you don't expect perfection. They expect honesty. They expect you to let them in, even when it's hard. So I want to ask you something. Have you ever tried to carry too much on your own? And what happened when you finally shared it? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story touched you in any way, don't forget to like and subscribe. Wherever you're watching from and whatever time it is for you right now, I hope you remember this. You don't have to carry it alone.